Or would you like us to know as we consider your candidacy for the Harvard Business School MBA program? Now, I loved that admissions question, and it was part of the HBS application until last year. Now, admittedly, open-ended, it nevertheless gave applicants the chance to share their very personal and distinct story. And with over 9,800 applicants for 930 places in last year's class of 26, there are very many of those personal and distinct stories to share. Now, that's certainly true of my guest at Centre Court, Marcus Ringer, from the Harvard MBA class of 2025. I don't even know where to start. British High Commission posts in Niger, Chad, Liberia. There was a tennis championship in Dakar. Heavyweight boxing, I think, during the years at Durham University. And don't get me started on armed car crashes. But how do you still tell that story to Harvard admissions in 900 words? Marcus, it's lovely to see you again. Are you well?
Very well, thanks, Matt. Yeah, great to see you.
Already, what, 18 months at HBS, and people tell you that it goes by quickly, but does it?
Yeah, it's gone by like a flash. It's shocking to think that only in a few months we'll be graduating. It's all gone too fast.
Yeah. Now, I just gave a brief intro, but perhaps there are things you can share, even think about what you told Harvard admissions. So give our Centre Court audience just a brief sense of your background.
Yeah, so I mean, as you said, I'm probably go into the category of non-traditional here. I spent nearly 5 years in the UK's diplomatic service, so the equivalent of the US Foreign Service. I had a posting to Bangladesh. I spent a lot of time in West Africa, working on trade, security, a lot of that in teams, some of it independently. Had an absolute blast. It was a real adventure. And yeah, I mean, I can't knock the experience to be honest, but I realized towards the end of those 5 years that there was another itch to scratch, and that was entrepreneurship, and hence my application to business school.
Now, perhaps at the British High Commission, lots of very talented and outward-looking individuals, but in consulting, banking, engineering, people that are thinking about business school, what was your thinking as you considered an MBA, whether it was worth the investment financially and, of course, the time that it requires?
Yeah, of course. So I think for me, the main drive. I mean, I grew up in an entrepreneurial household. So my father was he runs a small real estate business in the UK. So I had that experience growing up, and it was the conversation around the dinner table, and he would always be at school pickup, school sports matches. He had that autonomy and freedom that I found like, and that became the norm for me. And I think for the family. So I always had that in the back of my head as something that I would like to achieve one day. But fast forward a few years, I was working in the government, which is perhaps on the other end of the spectrum with that. But again, as I said, I absolutely love that job. But I came to a point where it really made sense to take the leap. And I felt this urge to do something different. And it was actually a very fortuitous conversation with an old school friend who spoke about business school and MBAs. I was like, what are those? I don't even know what that is. And he sort of spoke it through, spoke about the GMAT, the GRE, and eventually what it involves, and particularly with a focus on US programs. And it was like a proper light bulb moment for me. It was either continuing government, maybe finding a traditional job on the outside of government, or doing this. And this felt like such a natural fit. So that was the main drive, and it felt attractive because it was essentially a 2 year pressure cooker to sort of figure out what I actually wanted to do, and to be surrounded by smart, driven people, much smarter than me, from around the world. And then I guess the sort of the secondary questions were financial, and then sort of personal growth. So for me, coming in from the government, the ROI, I don't even know what the HBS salaries are now, but you can look them up, and they're pretty high. Um, the ROI felt pretty sort of significant for me, coming from government salaries. So that was part of the question, and you know, I figured out that I think with that salary that there might be some help from the school, and they make that abundantly clear through the application process, and certainly when you get here on campus, they really want to help talent get into the school if the finances are a burden. And I was lucky enough to have that benefit as well. So that was the financial side of things. That's not to say I've certainly got some debt to pay off, but they've been very, very generous with me. And then sort of the personal decision, 2 years is a big commitment. It's 2 years of tuition fees, no salary, and sort of missing opportunities elsewhere potentially. But for me, I couldn't really think of a better way to be spending the time. The extra year for me was a consideration versus some of the European programs. And I think that's an underrated quality of the US MBA, actually. It's that sort of chance to actually introspect, think about what you want to go on and do, spend more time with people as you reflect on that decision. Because I find your peers here are a great resource for thinking that through, and certainly professors and the careers and professional services, professional development department here. So you've got all of these tools you can pull as you think through those decisions. But actually, the opportunity for that growth and that exploration for me meant that I entirely focused my efforts on US programs, and that's I think in many ways really paid off.
Was it daunting? Because we talk about 9,000 applicants for 930 places, and wondering, is there a place for me?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think everyone has that. We speak a lot about imposter syndrome here. I don't think there's anyone on campus that doesn't feel that. And it's just about working through that. I mean, I think this if you look at the stats and it feels like an unassailable task, but the more, and this was with Fortuna's help in particular, the more you focus on your personal story, and HBS is really thinking through like what is the unique value this person's going to bring to the classroom. And I'm sure we'll talk about the case method, but what experiences are they going to bring into the classroom? And I felt, at least on that front, I'd done slightly different things and had different experiences to others, and felt that that might be value additive, possibly. I mean, so I think that being able to position myself as a unique candidate, which I think many people can do, is just really thinking about who you are and what you've done in a creative way. Um, gave me sort of some sense of confidence looking at the MBA programs as a whole, not specifically HBS, as actually, I might stand a chance here, and it's worth a punt.
Mm. Now, I mentioned armed car crashes. You certainly had a distinct. I didn't know if you actually won those bouts in boxing. Many candidates are almost overwhelmed. What am I supposed to say? What does Harvard want to hear? Were you able to enjoy this rare opportunity to sort of step back and really, think deeply about what you wanted from life
At the school, or
in
well,
applying to the school?
for sure. Yeah, I think the it's this is again, a lot of this is down to the experience with Fortuna, but it's really taking a step back and thinking, about your life almost from start to finish, and sort of the key influences in your life, the key decision points, and what influence those decisions. And I became much more clear around, what drives my behaviors, and actually you start identifying, often with the help of others, that connecting thread through those different experiences. And I think that is the most powerful material and information to be sharing with the school. Yeah, I think that it was almost like a therapist conversation. It's these open-ended questions which force you to think and introspect and go, actually, wow, that is a thing, and maybe that's because of this, and actually you start to think about that more, and you go, actually, that does start to make sense, and that connecting thread, I think, is really powerful when it comes to the application.
Now, you talked about the case method. They've been doing it for
Mhm.
104 years now, that pin factory back in 1921. Tell us about that learning experience, and perhaps why you feel that it's so special.
Yeah, you know what? This is something, until the admitted students weekend, which is where you sort of come to the school to experience it. Once you've been accepted, I had no idea just how intense it was. And it is a very unique experience. And at the start, it can feel extremely daunting. I could speak firsthand. I was pretty scared about the whole thing. You're speaking in front of 90 strangers from around the world, often on topics you barely understand. For me, having to walk through sort of a discounted cash flow in front of 90 people, was brutal, and not something that to be honest, I probably still don't feel too comfortable doing that. So it is a nerve-wracking experience. There's no hiding that. But if you're, as soon as you sort of commit and accept that this is going to be a fact of life at HBS, you also start to realize that everyone else is feeling pretty anxious and nervous, certainly at the start. And I've done very little public speaking in the past, and this has sort of given me real confidence that I can do that. And you get much more articulate and clear about your communication. But in terms of sort of the benefits of it, I mean, it's a really cool way of learning. It's the way they talk about it is you've got the conductor and the students of the orchestra, the orchestra. Um, and so the professor will lead in with a question, and then the idea is we stimulate conversation with each other based on our experiences, our opinions, and the facts of the case that you read in advance of the class. And they can range from anything from sort of a few pages up to 30, 40 pages in some instances. So there's a lot of material, there's quite a lot of pressure, but it's amazing how much you can learn from your peers. And these conversations, will bring so many different perspectives on the same facts. Uh, and you will learn so much. And the conversation often continues outside of the classroom as well, because people are really curious here. They're here to learn. And that I should add actually is one of the most sort of distinguishing factors of HBS. Even as we push towards graduation, the academic rigor in the classes is still super important to everyone. And people are working really hard to get into the class prepared and to have a proper conversation about it.
Right.
Um,
Now, getting cold called on discounted cash flow and having something insightful and pithy to say in 60 seconds, I can see why that could sound pretty daunting. You have thought about business school also in this transition towards entrepreneurship. The school
yeah.
has the Rock Center for Entrepreneurship, and a smaller number of students that will use the time between year one and year two. An enormous number of Harvard graduates, 5 years out, are looking to start their own business. So, where does entrepreneurship fit in this general management program?
Yeah, I think this was certainly sort of some surprise to me. I felt coming into the school, entrepreneurship was absolutely part of my plan. I didn't know when it was going to happen. I didn't know whether it was going to be straight after school or further down the line. But my perspective of coming into HBS was that it was an incredibly effective machine at putting people into good corporate jobs afterwards, and highly sought after corporate jobs afterwards. But I remember when we got here, there was, I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it was someone in the admissions team shared that the vast majority of HBS graduates will end up joining small firms or doing something entrepreneurial. And I think it's like 50% of HBS graduates. I mean, check the data. I think it's something around 50% of HBS graduates end up running their own business in some capacity in their lifetime. Um, so that drive towards something entrepreneurial was really clear from the start, and it was actually a surprise to me. So to think through some of the resources. So yes, you've got the Rock Center, and you can have office hours with practitioners in their field. You can have office hours with anything from sort of lawyers or industry experts to really sort of start thinking through your ideas. But I think that the power of the MBA, but in particular HBS, is really in giving you the confidence and conviction that you can do it. You can make consequential decisions, you can take calculated risk, and actually seek those things out. It's not forced by any means. This is very much a subjective decision, but they really do give you the tools and resources through the Rock Center, through your peers, through professors, and office hours with professors, the clubs, all of the student clubs, uh, to allow you to sort of start building that decision, and that confidence that you can go on and do these things. So, to give you one example of that, I am and going on to do something entrepreneurial after school. I'm actually incidentally doing it with my roommate, an Aussie, much smarter than I am. So I've picked the right horse. Um, we got really involved in the Entrepreneurship Through Acquisition Club as a student club, at the school. Search Fund is another term used for ETA. Really amazing club. You've got guest speakers coming in all the time. You've got investors, you've got entrepreneurs, you've got HBS searchers fresh out the trenches or that are currently working in small businesses around the US. So you've got all of these people coming in and sharing their opinions of the different ways they've actually conducted their search and operate the business. And you get weekly free food, either sushi, Mexican or Greek, which is yeah, super. Everyone looks forward to it. So it's yeah, there's a ton of things you can be doing.
With the intensity that you described, the academic rigor between 35 pages to prepare for cases, how do you then achieve a balance? Because you talk about a club that's proved to be extraordinarily worthwhile and good free food. Um, to actually use this, Harvard's motto or slogan is about educating leaders that will have impact. How do the clubs also then contribute to that leadership journey?
As sorry, just so I can clarify, this is how one achieves balance at HBS, or is this
Perhaps yes, but balance and how you prioritize with so many
oh,
demands
between
on your time,
academic
and the
job?
clubs themselves that are contributing to that leadership journey.
Totally understand. So I think the you get into a rhythm of the cases and the case method and the classes. So, when you start, it might take you a couple of hours to read through a case, really think through it and prepare. And you get pattern recognition around these things, and you start to get more confident in, and you start to really hone in on where you can bring value to the class, and that maybe narrows down into sort of certain sections of that case. So you become more efficient on that front. That tends to free up time for things like a job search and the clubs. Um, Really, these things work in cycles. So you'll start off, and HBS certainly starts off very intense on the academia. You start to get into a rhythm, and that starts to mellow out a bit as you're starting to look for jobs. So they're very, very conscious of that here. And they're really trying, they are not trying to sort of dictate or be too prescriptive around exactly what you should be doing when. And they're very sort of a lot of the classes will flex around. I mean, you still have to turn up and be committed and prepare, but cases might be shorter, for instance, around the times that people are job searching, or they might take on a different context. So I think the school's very conscious of that. You naturally start to accustomize, you're acclimatized to sort of the different peaks and troughs of the year. And then naturally, when it comes to recruiting and job searching, you're going to throw yourself, headfirst into all of the resources that the school can help with that. So, you take an example of, say, the consulting club. Those that are looking to go into the top consulting firms either for the summer internship or afterwards will have countless peers from McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and others to case prep them in the consulting club as much as they would need to share, classic cases, help them to help them get across the line for that internship. So, it's classic time management and prioritization. You have to get good at it, but the school is also hyper conscious of it.
Right. There are perhaps more entrepreneurs in a Salman Rushdie novel than there are landowners in a Jane Austen novel. You'd studied English literature at Durham. Um, the numbers, is that something you just need to be
Yeah.
competent with numbers?
Yeah, this was probably the thing that I was most nervous about coming into the school and actually kicking off the whole process. Can I get through the GRE and get a half decent score? And when I get into the school, am I going to be able to keep up? I actually raised it as in my interview with HBS as well. The question of what are you most concerned about when joining the school? And for me, it was the quantitative things. Um, yeah, the numbers you figure it out. It's not rocket science. This is uh, usually fairly simple maths, and you are doing it again and again and again, and you're often doing it with friends who have had experience in private equity, investment banking, who really understand, the things to look out for, how to calculate certain things, and they're there to help you. I'm not going to leave here being, the next sort of best hedge fund analyst or trader or whatever it might be. But I can look at a discounted cash flow. I can look through a spreadsheet and have an income statement, balance sheet, and have a fairly good sense of what's going on. So it's getting you to that sort of hygiene level of understanding for those that haven't had that experience in the past. And I think more importantly, if I ever get into a situation where I'm not too sure what's going on, but I've given it a good stab, I have so many friends that I can call up and say, actually, can you help me through this? And, what should I be looking out for here? And they're always on hand to help you.
Yeah. Perhaps there's no one thing that surprised you. It might be a collective. Um, so, what was unexpected, or perhaps what have you learned about yourself during the
Mm.
entire experience?
Yeah, I think the I thought a bit about this over the last few weeks actually. I think that it's really the confidence that HBS instills in you. It's I think they talk about, if you come into this program thinking why me and you leave it thinking why not me.
Mm.
And I think that's really powerful. Um, and if you told me coming into this with an English lit degree, experience in a non-traditional career path, that I would be leaving with co-founder, investors, professors that I can call up when I need to, and this clear pathway to hopefully owning and operating US businesses, uh, I would have laughed you out the room. It's like completely out the bounds of what I thought was possible. So for me, it's been a genuinely transformative experience. It's totally surpassed my expectations of just that level of conviction that I now have, and I know many of my peers think exactly the same way. And I think sort of tied within that is the school's push to or I shouldn't say push, I'd say encouragement to take calculated risks, seek out volatility, you know, find opportunities to take consequential decisions and really push yourself to go on and achieve those things that you really care about. And I think that has been a big surprise for me.
Hmm. Perhaps you've captured it with, why me? And then in the end, why not me? But for this global audience at Centre Court, your biggest piece of advice to someone considering an MBA, perhaps Harvard Business School in particular, and making all of that possible.
Yeah, look, I think you're probably picking out the most biased person you could, because I've had an incredible experience here, but I would just say do it. Everyone's financial situation is different. I know for a lot of people that is a big hurdle. In the case of HBS, and I can only speak for HBS, they will really try to support you financially. You just have to be thinking about that early on in the process. And for me, it's a question of, as I was thinking through those different options coming out of the government, it was, how could I create an experience which would just completely bend my learning curve and give me opportunities I couldn't have otherwise imagined. And this has done that and more. And I can't think of a way, and again, this is in particular to HBS, is of recreating this experience. You're surrounded by some of the smartest, most driven people from all countries around the world, over 50 countries. You have 2 years to figure out your personal and professional path, and you have practitioners, professors genuinely invested in your growth and all the tools and resources at hand to like make that happen. So, when you think about like I think about it like that, well, it gives me buzz just talking about it. But like it's such a cool experience and totally unique. And if you can find a way of making it happen, I would strongly encourage you to.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing recipe, and it's wonderful for us to be able to capture that and share that with the Centre Court audience. So, Marcus, thank you for enjoy the remaining months. And I don't know if you already ordered your cap and gown, but it was
Not just, yeah,
great to have this
coming
session together. Thank you.
anytime. Really appreciate it, Matt. Thanks.